I'm sorry that a lot of this is just do your own research because it is. You're already doing so much and learning about plants and what is edible, what isn't, and how to eat it, and the medicinal qualities. And you know what? What is a little bit more research to make sure that we continue doing this sustainably and ethically? I'm just going to be honest. There are no hard rules, there's no strict standards, there's nothing that I'm going to tell you that specifically lets you know whether you're harvesting sustainably and ethically. However, I will give you lots of things to think about and consider whenever you are out foraging so you can make that decision for yourself. If it is your first time collecting a plant, I suggest only collecting enough for 1 to 3 things to try to make sure that you actually like it. You know, I'm speaking from personal experience where I was so excited whenever I first started foraging that I collected a whole bunch of plants that I didn't know what to do with, and they just sat on the counter, you know? Start out small, and if you miss the window to collect more, then collect more next year. It's fine. On the other hand, if this is your only way to eat, it is your only food source, then do what you have to do, right? Another point for foraging ethically is I like to look at whether this plant is native, naturalized, or invasive. Native plants are defined as species that have evolved and occur naturally in a particular ecosystem or habitat. Non-native or naturalized species are ones that have been brought here, escaped cultivation, and they've integrated themselves into the environment without causing harm. Invasive plants, they are not native and they cause incredible harm to our environment. Now, that could be outcompeting our native plants, it could be that it's toxic or poisonous, it could be that it's a carrier for a disease. Now, there are some invasive plants that you can eat or can use in some fashion. For example, our kudzu that we have all over the South. But so many parts of that plant is edible, medicinal, and then you can use the vines to make baskets. Like, it can be used for things. So whenever I'm going into an environment, I like to prioritize taking invasive species first, naturalized plants next, and then giving our native indigenous species a chance to spread and grow. There is an exception to that in that if a native species has absolutely taken over an area to where it's basically monopolized it, then okay, take more of that native plant and create more opportunity for diversity to enter that area. So here we are, even on our first ethical point. It's, well, look at your environment, see what's there, see what's thriving, see how we can influence it in the best way possible. As for harvesting sustainably, so to make sure that we can continue to forage year after year after year, possibly with better yields, is we need to understand a few things about the plants. So, how does it reproduce? There are 2 main ways that plants will reproduce. One is through flowering, pollination, and seeds, and then propagation. That is through leaves, stems, rhizomes, roots, and it's basically taking the plant material, putting it on the ground, and it'll grow roots, and that's how it propagates. If we understand how the plant reproduces itself, then we can make sure not to interrupt its cycle and that it continues to thrive and spread. Another thing to be aware of is the life cycle of the plant that you're harvesting. Is it an annual, a biennial, or a perennial? An annual, they complete their life cycle in 1 year. So they germinate, grow, flower, seed, and die, all within the same year. A biennial will take 2 years to complete that cycle, and a perennial will live for 3 or more years. I am a little bit more cautious of annuals and biennials just because their life cycle is so short. And so I pay attention to how much of that plant is in the environment. And I'm less likely to take its roots and seeds unless there is just an overabundance of that plant. With perennials, I'm much more likely to take the fruit, flowers, leaves, things, because if I don't take too much of the plant, it's going to recover. I'm more cautious about taking roots from perennials just because, they've taken years to grow. But of course, if there's an overabundance of that plant and I'm taking an older one and giving a younger plant a chance to grow and continue its life cycle, we have to see what's there. Of plants are used to grazers. So especially in spring, whenever there's the tender tips on top, the plant pretty much expects for deer, rabbits, lots of other creatures to go and just take the top bits off. And so we're able to do the same. It's going to recover and we get a tasty snack out of it. Another thing to consider is, where are you foraging? If you are on private property, your own property, and no one else is foraging, then yeah, you have a little bit more leeway to take a lot of a certain plant or take less of others. But if you're on public property, you need to be more cautious about what you're taking because you're not going to be the only one in that environment. And you also have all of the animals and birds and bugs and things that are also dependent on those plants. I wish I could say, oh, only take 5% of a plant, only take 30% of a plant, or in some cases, 100%. But it really is going to come down to your own discernment and the environment you're in and what's there. Also, your needs. I hope all that makes sense. And if you have any questions or things that I've left out, put it in the comments. I'd love to read it. But thank you guys for being here. And I hope we continue to appreciate nature and keep our environments beautiful. You guys have a great one.